tramping the streets roundabout because of his job, introduced Lowry to a cityscape that he hadn't been particularly familiar with before. It was staring him in the face. He was a painter, and I got the ideal subject. And all these people. He was of his time and of his place.
Something about Lowry. I think he's one of the major figures of 20th century English art. There's no doubt about that. But there's something about eccentricity, loneliness, people who have a very quirky vision of life. And the thing about Lowry is he did have a vision of the world.
I have friends who say, oh, we people watch. Well, he was the king of people watching. But you didn't know. He didn't stare at them. Fascinating. He was very clever at it.
But there was a great snobbery against Lowry. He was detested and despised by everybody else except the people who liked what they called the stick people. And I think he was considered half-witted.
I find it amazing that an artist has got that much of a strong identity is not accepted, because surely that's what art is all about, you know. It's reflecting real life and you know what it is when you see it, kind of thing.
The thing that makes Lowry so popular is the same thing that stops him from being the subject of serious critical attention, that what attracts so many people is a sort of sentimentality about him.
Lowry is a great painter because he makes us see things differently. And if anyone can do that, they get my vote.
I like oils. Ivory black, vermilion, Prussian blue, yellow ochre, flake white, and no medium. That's all I've ever used in my paintings. I am a simple man and I use simple materials. Lowry is best known for his industrial mill scenes and crowds.
It's not a place of great contrasts of light and shade. Manchester, and as Lowry pointed out himself, I don't think he ever painted a shadow. Not because the sun didn't shine, but they couldn't always get through. My mother used to hang out the washing on a Monday, and if she was unfortunate, by the end of the day, it would be as dirty as when it had gone into the dolly tub in the morning because of the soot in the air.
At first, when I was young, I did not see the beauty. Then one day, I suddenly saw it. It changed my life.
It's all presented very cunningly. You don't really notice it. You think, oh, that's exactly like Lancashire used to be. No, it isn't. It's a representation of Lancashire and the spirit of the thing. And you see that strongly in the crowd scenes.
It's like when they say, when was the first time you heard the Beatles? It's like, I don't know, it's always been there for me, always. I guess all the people that he ever met were all in there somehow. Even though there's thousands of people in those, not thousands, but hundreds of people in those paintings, they're all individuals in some way. There's like a solace in them, I think, you know. And you see them walking, they seem to be in their own little world. And I guess I was like that when I was kind of younger. I was in my own little world and it was quite quiet, Manchester. It's a fair enough description, is that most of his paintings are based around people, are they not?
Until Samuel Beckett wrote Waiting for Godot, nobody had noticed that most of our lives are to do with waiting. And until Lowry painted these
crowds, no one had noticed that that's how human beings behave. And you cannot now go out, watch a football crowd going to a play, watch people come out of a theatre or any place where they've assembled, or just going up and down a busy street without saying, oh, it's a Lowry painting. Yeah, we are all in a Lowry painting. And that's what he discovered. You don't need any other message from Lowry, but this is how human beings behave.
Everybody's on the move, aren't they? There's nobody standing still. Everybody's walking. They're all slightly hunched over, aren't they? I mean, they're very brilliant. It only works in the rain, though, don't you find? You get great skies up in Manchester, real turbulent. Grey skies and tall buildings. And a little scraggy dog.
My characters, they're people you might see in a park. They're real people. All my people are lonely. Crowds are the most lonely thing of all. Everyone is a stranger to everyone else. You only have to look at them to see that. They have a look in their eye. There's a mystery about them. I feel I'm compelled to try and draw them. I wonder all the time, what is their life?
He really saw crowds as full of interesting, quirky, fascinating people that he wished he knew more about. This strange sort of anthill of a world was full of fascinating, odd, curious, interesting things.
The baby. What's that, Mum? Boy dragging his dog along. Who's that? What are you looking at me for? Get out of the way. And the boy behind suddenly turned around. What's he doing? Somehow that's how this painting works, is because we are invited in by characters who are in this play of life and are saying, yes, I've seen you too. Ooh, a rather grumpy lady saying, what are you doing, young man? Stop it.
Character was something he was always looking for. He loved ugly places. He said, we must go and see that place. It's supposed to be the ugliest building in Manchester. We must go and see it again. I hope they haven't pulled it down. He found something very interesting about buildings and people who were ugly, because they had character.
This is Francis Terrace in Salford, an actual place. You can see why it might appeal to an artist, because it's easy to get a focus of attention. It's like a set for a stage show, and there's often something theatrical about Lowry's composition and figures. And here's another example. These buildings look not quite flimsy, but a little bit artificial, allowing the characters to take on the life of the piece, and then making the thing really a stage performance. Where is Mr. Lowry painting this from? He's not on a level with the characters. He's not down here. He's sort of a little bit above them. It's almost as if he's sitting in the dress circle of watching a performance. There's lots to enjoy about the funeral party, which he painted in 1953. Where are they? Are they in the sea? What's this behind them? The sky? Where's the floor? They're floating, are they? Well, I'm an actor, and they seem to me to be on a stage, don't they?
You know, pantomime is the most popular sort of theatre in this country. And I think people detect in Lowry what they detect in a pantomime. His figures are often very broad, very confrontational. Here I am, what do you think? There's something happens when you look at a painting and you suddenly realize that part of the painting is looking at you. And it's what happens in a play when a character looks out at the audience, as he does in Shakespeare, and asks the audience, to be or not to be? That's the question. Much more interesting than saying it to himself. And of course, in pantomime, the most popular theatre of all the characters are constantly talking to the audience and singing with them and even getting the audience up on stage. I don't quite believe this woman, do you? She looks to be just making herself look worse than she is. And this guy staring right out at us, saying, well, here I am. These are my crutches, and that's my funny face and my eyeball.
I remember one evening, we were sitting overlooking the main park in Manchester, and he turned to me and he said, people think I only paint freaks, but just let's have a look. So we sat and watched, and suddenly his eyes said, look, that one's got a twitch, that one's got a humpback, that one's got a very odd face. That woman's obviously had a row with her husband. And he went through all the passers-by. He said, you see what I mean? It's life. It's the battle of life, isn't it? That was his great phrase. What he really loved was the battle of life.
Where there's a quarrel, there's always a crowd. It's a great draw, a quarrel, or a body.
He had a genuine fondness for these people. And he wasn't sending them up, he wasn't mocking them at all. It was his way of saying, you're interesting.
My father was an estate agent, and he used to go to his office every day in Manchester. He was a quiet man, and let me be. My mother wanted to be a concert pianist, and her playing was a great thing in my life. She had an eye for what was beautiful, and had a collection of old clocks. I was their only child. They really wanted a girl.
His mother was aloof. She played the piano. She was a snob, and she was never, it seemed, happy with their lot. Just disgruntled, unhappy with the way they'd slightly gone down in the world in her eyes. She wanted a middle-class life. I don't think it was an incredibly happy household.
At school I had few friends and I never passed any exams. It was suggested that I went in for art as I was fit for nothing else. Time went on and on until finally an aunt remembered that I'd drawn little ships when I was 8. So that was that. It was any port in a storm.
I think it was a gift for Lowry. From an early age, he was interested in drawing. He painted rather formal portraits of his parents to start off with, and slowly the world opened up for him, the world that he saw every day. He learnt to draw very well. In fact, he was an extraordinarily good draftsman, I think, which can be seen in a lot of his drawings.
This isn't a man who came to it by chance. He worked at it. He went to evening classes for drawing for years and years and years. He felt he could never learn enough.
When he was 22 years old in 1909, Lowry, with his parents, moved to this house in Pendlebury, surrounded by working-class houses and industrial buildings we know from the paintings, which were all done here in the middle of the night after his mother had been tucked up in bed. Not painted in situ, always painted from memory and imagination in this house. This is where the really famous industrial landscapes were painted.
Lowry worked by day as a rent collector and painted by night. This routine went on for 40 years.
You know, this is a way that Lowry met the nation, and I'm sure he was a very kindly rent collector. Stories go, he often helped out with people who couldn't pay, but this was it was an inspiration to him, and it gave him ideas. Certain pictures, I think the removal was a famous one of somebody having their furniture auctioned in their front garden in front of the neighbours. I think this is a terribly sad story, but this is what happened at that time. I think this was the 20s.
What, no Mr. Lowry?
I think it's timeless because it's about human problems, his people. They have their problems with them, and humans will always have those same problems. And so I found it enriching. Can you keep that elbow as that comes in? Keep it high so that your arm has to really find its way round the elbow. Keep it high, keep it high, keep it high, keep it high. Good. That's it. I try very much to build a vision of the persona and the spirit of a person, even if I'm doing something abstract. So for me, there were so many clues from what he does. It's a bit like doing cats. I found there were so many clues from T.S. Eliot, that wit and explicit wording of his work, where you knew where the character was. I find the same with Lowry. His resilience and the guts to keep going against all the odds when nothing helps you, that is in his spine. And look at her. She's going to pound through life. It's beautifully painted without being, very, very obvious. And here is his fantasy. Here is Anne.
But there was this sort of generic female, dark-haired, young girl with a centre parting, with a sort of rose complexion, almost always painted from the front, although there are one or two profiles. A number of them are called Portrait of Anne. And whether this was a real-life figure or a sort of composite of an idealized girlfriend or mother, I'm not quite sure.
I've never been married. I've never had a girl, in fact. There was one girl at art school, and one October, she wasn't there, and that was the end of it. And now it's too late to start.
He never actually had a girlfriend. The mother held him back because the mother wouldn't tolerate it. There she is, Mother. You can see how he respected her very much from this painting, I think. But there's a terrible lack of kindness in her. With that man, there doesn't appear to have been any kindness anywhere. And she manipulated him and the father by pretending to be ill when she couldn't entirely get her way.
The more she turned away from him, in a way, in a quiet way, not an aggressive way, the more he wanted her attention.
His mother was enormously important to him. She was endlessly critical of him and saying he was no good. So he was clearly somebody who wanted to be recognized. And what's very fascinating about his mother is that when she died, he was absolutely devastated. He was extremely depressed. He considered suicide. The main thing that this painting is conveying is his effort to come to terms with his grief and his effort to come to terms with the absence of his mother. The key issue in this painting is what's missing.
I have no family. I have only my studio. Were it not for my painting, I could not live. But it is more like a drug than a pleasure now. It helps me to forget that I'm alone.
Father and Two Sons represents a series of paintings which, to some extent, owe something to the trauma that Lowry experienced when his mother died, and I think that's what Lowry has captured, the way someone looks after some sort of trauma.
And of course, all those eyes are the self-portraits. They're classically part of autism. You can understand nothing about Lowry unless you understand his autism. He was a man who had very poor social relationships. He was a loner. He was happy in his own company. At school, he was bullied. And he got this autism both from his mother and his father. So you have the same genes that give you autism, give you the creativity. So it all came from inside his head.
I don't think there's any clear proof that Lowry had some sort of mental deficiency or that part of his capacity to think or behave was due to some medical condition.
I think people can read things in retrospect into situations and people, and it's not necessarily that helpful.
I think in the end, he identified himself in terms of his painting. I don't think anything else really mattered all that much except his relationship with one or two people. I think painting became his alter ego, if you like. It meant more to him than almost anything in his life.
It's interesting to see how Lowry's career progressed, that you would have thought he would have been accepted early on. He was exhibiting in Paris for very nearly 10 years in the 1920s, but almost completely ignored in Manchester, his hometown. It seems almost bizarre that he would be doing that, but it's certainly true.
People in the north, Manchester and that area, found his work tough. They didn't want to live with paintings of scenes that they could see every day of their lives. They wanted escapism.
In 1939, Lowry finally made his first breakthrough in the art world. He was 52.
Although it wasn't success as a young man, when it came, it was quite immediate.
The dealer, Alexander Reed, saw some paintings, sent them all round to the gallery. He was quite excited. He gave me a show a few months later in 1939, and I sold about 16. The Tate bought one.
So, on to the first of the Selwyn Demi collection of works by L.S. Lowry, R.A. Please start me at 140,000, please. 150, 160, thank you, sir. 170.
Today, Lowry's position in the British art market, in our opinion, is probably as high as it's ever been.
£420,000.
Hedge fund owners to famous architects to actors, and I'm not sure about footballers, but we've tried.
342, well done, sir, thank you. Lot number 46, £600,000. Sold 850, thank you very much.
In 2007, the world record was set for a Lowry at auction.
Today's collectors are mostly men who collect them, and very often they will collect more than one. It's almost as if once you start, you can't stop.
I fell in love with this one in particular straight away. It's an unusual Lowry, painted in 1961. It's not what you expect or immediately think of thousands of people. It's not that at all. but I just fell in love with it. This is a far more important picture, The Ferry at Knott's End, and I love it. It's a beautiful picture. The purchase of paintings of this price, it was a very, very reasonable price 30 years ago, were always based on a new book coming out. Because once I got the check for the advance, I never told my wife, I would always go off and buy a picture. And then the next one is in our bedroom, where this is an unusual picture, or so the experts tell me it's an unusual picture, and that is The Little Red House. I just love it. It's again an example of a picture I truly enjoy. Now, I'm afraid this is a mess at the moment because we're having one of our champagne and shepherd's pie parties, and all the bits and pieces, the paraphernalia are here, but it doesn't stop the fact that here is one that a lot of people love best of all. The Little Lowry, as I call it. I buy pictures because I love them, and I put them on the wall. I think it's a great picture. It's on the wall.
I have lived in Mottram since 1948. There is nothing at all in Mottram. It's a dreadful place. And I spend a lot of time wondering why I ever came to live in it.
Some days I used to drop it at the front, but mainly I dropped it at the back door. 2 pints of milk every day for Mr. Lowry. Just here, where we used to go in. I used to go in there, and he used to be painted in there every day when I used to go in. 2 pints of milk every day, because he used to drink a big glass of milk as well. Sometimes I used to pass it to him, and that's when he put his thumb in once, and the cream went all over the painting. So I had to throw that in the dustbin. He said, just put that in the dustbin, because he rubbed it and it all went all wet all over, so I put that in the dustbin as well for him on the way out. I used to see him paint, yeah, but there just seemed to be daubs on the canvas. I always thought that my children could paint better than Lowry, and how wrong was I? I think he was lonely in a way, but the point is, I think that's how he wanted to be in life, because I think he had too much on his mind with his talent of painting, which just kept him. He was just happy doing what he was doing.
I have my clocks. There are 9 of them here and others all over the house. They come from my mother's collection. They all keep different times, but you get used to it. You have to be thankful they all go at that age.
He did like sadness, something about Lowry. It's the love of loneliness, the love of sadness. He felt that it was poetic.
In the 50s, Lowry met 13-year-old Carol Ann Lowry, same name but no relation.
He came to visit to try to see me after I'd written a letter to him saying I was interested in art, and I was 13 and I wanted to go to a Saturday morning art class. Oh, my mother made me do it, really. This person knocked to the door and he said, "Does Miss Carol Ann Lowry live there?" Well, to say to a girl from Haywood, Miss Carol Ann, full title, it's really bizarre. So I said, "I'm Miss Carol Ann Lowry." It must have been very funny to him. Of course, it was really serious to me. You know, I can imagine him. I was only 13, and Victorian looking. You know, he had one of these detached shirts and a waistcoat that had loads of buttons everywhere, and big hands. Sometimes he had white paint on his clothes, a lot of times. He was like a grandpa, like an uncle, a man who was wise and who was interesting, fascinating. It's really difficult to explain because he had many facets. He did some beautiful works. And he would go miles and miles over the hills. And he told me once he used to put a pin in the map, because he didn't know where to go, so he put a pin in the map. And he'd been everywhere in the British Isles, everywhere. If you drive round sometimes, you know, once you see Lowry, you see them all over the British Isles. They're all over the place. They are not really ones that we know from Lowry. They're not industrial scenes. But I think everything that's in an industrial scene is in here, and vice versa. The depth is there, the distance, the weather is there, everything's there.
His sensitivity and soul as a painter, I think, is manifested far more in his beautiful, empty, subtle landscapes and seascapes where there's barely a figure present, maybe a boat, certainly some trees, a telegraph pole or two, and it's there where I imagine Lowry sitting and working alone.
It was always the odd that fascinated him. Or it would be something perfectly normal that he wouldn't make odd.
I never thought they'd ever be famous, but I might have had to stop putting the milk on the front doorstep now I'm thinking about it, because they had everything locked up. I remember him leaving Mrs. Swingle's, the housekeeper, a nice big painting. I saw that in her house, and then she got robbed, and that frightened her, and she never seen it recover. It ruined her life, really, just for a Lowry painting.
Is different, and a person that's different in any walk of life can become famous for one reason or another and successful. He loved his mother. He did turn down a knighthood, and I'm sure if she'd have been alive and they got to that stage, she'd have loved that, and he'd had to accept it, but he did turn it down.
The Tate bought Coming Out of School. It was made into a postage stamp in 1967, and within a few weeks, all of its 11 million copies had been sold.
He was comfortable financially, certainly from the 60s onwards. I don't think he had a need for money. I mean, his weaknesses in terms of spending his money, I think, were reserved to Tompion clocks and pre-Raphaelite drawings and paintings.
He would scare himself a bit by having to bid £4,000 or £5,000 or £6,000, which seems nothing now, but in the 60s that's a lot of money. So all the Rossetti ladies had made it up to the bedroom, so when he went to bed at night he was surrounded by all these wonderful, ethereal Rossetti portraits.
I've always been fascinated by certain types of women he painted. His women are really rather horrible. They're not real women, they're dreams. They're very queer creatures, but I like them for it. Very queer creatures.
In the same way that a man who had been successful might reward himself with a sports car or a fancy house or whatever, he had rewarded himself with paintings.
He did enjoy, now Lord Attenborough, those sort of big names that definitely followed Lowry's work and collected his work. So there were two sides of him. He got used to the quietness, but he also quite liked a bit of the story side.
How long since you were last here?
They only invited famous artists to come here to teach us what it was like to be an artist, you see. So I was very proud to have met him, very, very proud. And it served me all these years, you know, it given me courage all these years. I was inspired by him. He was very tall. He had a white face, and he was very impressive. And he was like a magic figure, you know? He was like a magic figure. What I liked, I mean, also that he was his own person, and he did what he jolly well wanted. He's on his own, really. I think he's on his own. And I like that. I think I admire that, really I do.
I say to young artists, no need to go to London to become a famous painter. You won't find better lampposts there. In 1976, the major retrospective Lowry had always longed for took place at the Royal Academy in London. It was one of their most successful shows ever. Lowry died aged 89 just before it happened. Carol inherited his entire estate.
I was shocked, really shocked. And it took a long time, several years, before it hit me properly what all this was all about. I don't really know why he left it to me. He certainly never warned me. I thought I'd get what he said, the sideboard and the piano and stuff like that.
One day I came with the milk and they were, after he died, and then they were all security van and everything was being taken away, and that was the last time I ever saw the Lowry paintings.
Right. Whoa. You want to open them?
No, yeah, well...
Go on.
What's in here? Oh, my goodness me. That looks like it's a real place as opposed to a composite, but perhaps not.
Well, it does, doesn't it? Yeah. It's beautiful, I think. No, all these were stuffed in the back room where he painted.
So it wasn't that he'd saved them.
No.
He'd kept them, but he hadn't saved them, as it were.
I think sometimes he said, I'm not letting that out. I'm not letting, I could hear him, you know, you can hear him in conversation. Well, that one, I'm not letting that go. Now you can open that one. I mean, they're amazing stuff. If I forget about the connection with Lowry, if I saw those, I would be fascinated and drawn to them.
You would, absolutely.
I mean, this is amazing stuff.
It is amazing. Have a look at this maiden.
This? Well, you're going to see more of it.
It's like a costume design, isn't it?
Well, yes, I think there's...
You know, when they do sketches for you in the theatre, they often give you something like that. It's a bit exaggerated.
Right.
And the concentration is on the figure, and the poor old actor has to sort of fit in with the costume. And she's a bit bound in by it all, isn't she?
Oh, yes. There are quite a lot of them.
Fingernails.
Yeah. But they do talk about the ballet. Some people, you know, and I think he's right. It's right that these are... his ideas sprung from ballet.
Right.
Because he was very keen on ballet.
Yes.
Or he used the ballet to put over something he wanted to put over.
Yeah.
Whichever.
Yeah.
he repeatedly went to the Coppelia. I went several times with him. The music of Coppelia he had at home, different records and things.
I would be 12, 13, because I think it was 57, something like that. And I was doing ballet. I saw myself as sort of the next prima ballerina, you know, as you usually would do at that age. And Carol just said, you know, Uncle Lowry, as he was called, had got tickets and invited us to meet him in Manchester for the ballet. It's Dr. Coppelius who has his workshop and makes these dolls, and all these dolls and things come to life.
This is a person who's manipulating, creating, and I think, why did he take me to see that and other people? Because we love watching the reaction. Like almost, it sounds awful to say, like a puppet master, but I think there was that element. He enjoyed seeing us develop and listening to how we work things out. He took me to see some scary things, really, when I think about it, and I didn't understand a lot of it.
Now then, oh, hello. Oh, hello, hello, hello.
Yeah, I know.
Well, those are invented, aren't they? I mean,
Yes.
He's not seen a ballet with someone's way.
No,
something
but
like
it is.
But she's got a ballet hairstyle.
Yes, and images, the
Swept
bows,
back.
and like very much like Coppelia in the
I
traditional
see, I
sense.
see, yes.
She was very much like the puppet doll.
Yes, and she's got pigtails,
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah.
These were thought to be very shocking when they were discovered.
Well, they certainly shocked me.
Yes.
He behaved like a grandfather to me. Well, like you would find, if you suddenly saw a grandfather doing things like this, you'd think, what? And also, I've often thought that he certainly controlled me to some degree. I don't mean in a nasty, controlling way, but a sort of guiding way. And he was interested in everything that I did.
How come this guy who does these figures, what they call stickmen, which they're not, also can do these bottled girls that have been siphoned into a bottle and screwed tight in there, and put bows on their hair and tits pushed up so that they could almost bite them themselves. They were more sadistic than they were sexy, I thought. Kinky is the word that comes to mind, but it's violent. In fact, these ones with the girls are violent pictures. But he hid them. I hid them, I guess he was ashamed of them or something. They thought they were more sexual than they were. Were they masturbatory or something? Maybe they were. I think it has a lot to do with contemporary art, too. And I love these. I truly, truly love these.
He did say to me repeatedly one thing. Well, they can say what they like about me after I'm gone. Funny thing to say.
Yes.
And you think of the relationships with young women he had who grew up to be older. He watched and absorbed everything.
Do you think he wouldn't want these displayed?
I think if he didn't want them displayed, he would have destroyed them.
Yes.
And anyway, they're here and they're part of his work. I think it's time now to
I think
show the whole thing, you know.
I think they're absolutely remarkable.
Yeah, so do I.
I think they're wonderful paintings that
I
should
do
be in the
too.
National Gallery. I'd say the Tate, but of course if they went to the Tate, they'd never be seen again, would they? Throughout his life, Lowry was considered an outsider, loved by the public but never fully accepted by the art establishment. And today it is just the same. Today the Tate owns 23 works by L.S. Lowry. They are all currently in storage. It's many years since Lowry was shown there.
You'd have thought the Tate would be showing all of their pictures some of the time, but you don't often see them. I've certainly been down to the basement and there they are, yet they don't seem to make a regular appearance.
They're not considered Tate-worthy, or is it just because he was a northerner?
They haven't found a way in which they can pick Lowry and make him contemporary, I think.
Does anybody know why, though? Why? I mean, what's the official line?
Well, Lowry's an odd character. There are so many different Lowrys in a way, and I think one of the challenges for him, across his career is that he's such a singular figure that he doesn't fit comfortably in the major stories of modern British art and modern art in general. I think to some extent Lowry's a victim of his fan base, or rather the qualities that probably make him popular are the same qualities that have caused him to be less celebrated, seriously celebrated by an artistic establishment or a community of critics and historians.
Oh, balls to the art establishment. If anybody makes a success in this country, the thing is to denigrate him or bring them down.
People forget in '76, which was the year Lowry died, I think over 350,000 visitors went to the Royal Academy. It was a record at the time. I think the same thing would happen again.
What we're going to show in the future, we don't yet know, but I mean, everything is there's a constant discussion about what will come and what will go, and that discussion is based both on what we want to bring out, which hasn't been seen for a while, what people want to see, and what works are being re-examined and rethought.
Well, if they did hang them in more Lowrys on their walls, they'd probably get more people going through the doors. He's extremely popular. The landscape in Manchester and its environs is utterly different now. But when you go out into modern Salford, the Lowry people are still there. And then as you pass the shop window, you have to say, oh, I'm a Lowry character too.